There are plenty of monsters here on Innistrad. Zombies, werewolves, vampires, that's enough to make anyone say, oh my. But Innistrad is also a human place, and that makes it a very scary world.
We know that on Innistrad we want ghosts, and we know on the original Innistrad there was the spirit tribe, and it just fell in the correct color pair to do what we wanted White and Blue to do, and we wanted that creature type to exist and matter in that tribal set. So we knew we weren't going to leave them behind this time, but we were faced with the same challenges. Like, spirits are, they're gonna fly, they're gonna be hard to block, and so they can't be very big. And in order to make them mechanically resonant, you have to think about what ghosts do, but what ghosts do doesn't really translate super well to magic, so what we had to look at was what could magic's ghosts do.
Spirits are a lot of fun. There's kind of two ways you can go with a spirit deck, or you can mix it together. A lot of the spirits have flying, so it's just very straightforward. I have a bunch of creatures with evasion. My opponent can't block them all. They will swiftly be defeated in the air. The other approach with spirits is a sort of flicker deck. You have a lot of spirits with abilities that trigger when they enter the battlefield. You combine those with spells that exile things and then bring them back, and you can re-up on your enters the battlefield triggers to get value.
On Innistrad, there are two types of zombies. We have scobs and we have ghouls. Ghouls are your type of zombies that are raised with necromancy from cemeteries and crypts. And then you have your scobs are the zombies that are cobbled together from disparate parts. They are the brain children of mad scientists working in their labs.
If you actually go look at the movies and stuff, zombies are slow, they're plotting, they're not particularly bright. You know, any one individual zombie is not supposed to be all that scary. You know, like an average human can deal with a zombie. What makes zombies scary is not that there's one zombie, there's a lot of zombies, there's a horde of zombies, there's a wave of zombies, and that they slowly overwhelm you. And so what we tried to do in Innistrad, the original Innistrad, was make that how they played. So when we came back, we're like, okay, don't mess with perfection.
Zombies, as we know, are relentless. Zombies, as we also know, are just not that fast. So a card like Geralf's Masterpiece, it will keep coming back at you over and over and over. In the long run, it's unstoppable, but development helpfully put specific costs on that card, so it's not going to actually come back from the dead every single turn, probably.
The vampires of Innistrad have this sort of veneer of sophisticated nobility, and literally a glamour that makes them appear more beautiful and more human than they actually look. In SOI, we begin to see that veneer drop a little bit. Vampires like Olivia Valdaran, they're not particularly affected by what's going on, but some of the Falconwrath vampires, which were always a little more savage, start to really dial that up and become more monstrous, less beautiful and elegant, and more ready to just rip your throat out.
So this time around on Innistrad, vampires are associated with madness. A lot of the red and black vampires play in this kind of madness deck. They're going a little crazy, things on Innistrad aren't quite right. So this guy, Falconwrath Gorger, a 2-1-for-1 mana, already pretty interesting, but it gives all your vampires madness. Now this is really unique because it lets you use your madness enablers, which there are plenty of in vampires, to play your entire hand sometimes if able. This is a great way we can infuse the flavor of what vampires are doing into the entire deck of vampires. You can play it with your old Innistrad vampires and have a whole new combination of strategies, or use some Shadows over Innistrad vampires and really knock it out of the park.
So there's a lot of cool design space you can have with vampires. They can fly, they're undead, they drink blood, they can turn into bats, and they can turn into mist. And in general, they're very evil, so there's a lot of cool things you can do on vampire cards in general.
As vital to the story as Nahiri visiting Markov Manor was, and decimating Sorin's brood, we knew that the rest of the vampires were going to have to do something. They would have to bring in reinforcements. We have cards like Call the Bloodline. They would have to mobilize. And so we wanted to find a less regal, less controlling, less very old school vampire Olivia, and have it be an Olivia that's just on the front lines, ready to fight. Like, something is going wrong on her home plane. She needs everyone at the ready, and her brood or her lineage rather, in the set is doing a lot of madness. So like specifically the Voldaran bloodline most of those vampires have madness, and so we wanted a madness enabler, we wanted a vampire lord, and we wanted it to be powerful. Last time around, Olivia was very impressive, very powerful in a lot of formats, and so we wanted this Olivia to live up to that lineage and also represent the new vampires on Innistrad.
We knew we were doing werewolves. In fact, one of the reasons that Avacyn going crazy was kind of important is we wanted to undo the thing that had turned a lot of the werewolves off being werewolves. We wanted our werewolves back. We wanted to be back in Innistrad. So one of the big questions was, okay, we knew they were double-faced cards. I mean, that was a given. But like, oh, are they supposed to be a little bit different? Are we supposed to somehow have them change? And so we looked into it and we said, no. Actually, the thing we did the first time worked really well. Let's make more werewolves, but we'll fill in the gaps. What didn't we do last time? How could we take the deck? We looked at the deck of werewolves and said, okay, what do you want that we didn't give you? And then try to fill in the gaps.
Werewolves in Shadows over Innistrad are basically exactly the same as they were in original Innistrad. So you're going to want to get your werewolves out, and then hopefully your opponent will stumble and won't be able to cast a spell, or maybe you'll take a turn off and activate some abilities of some of your creatures, and then your werewolves will transform onto their more powerful back face and just start smashing in there. They're very large for their mana cost, and it doesn't take long to do some serious damage.
So the double-sided card, Gear Reach Bandit and Vilden Pack Alpha. This is something that werewolf decks have kind of always wanted. The trick with werewolves, of course, is you have to get them to transform. If you can't get them to transform, they're going to be kind of smaller creatures. But if you can flip this one over and transform it, then all of your werewolves will get to transform when they come into play. That's huge. That means you get to play one down, immediately transform it, and start wrecking your opponent with it. So it's kind of one werewolf that can enable your entire strategy and a key component of the werewolf deck.
One of the things that was very interesting about original Innistrad is we had the vampires, we had the zombies, we had the werewolves, we had the ghosts, the spirits. But really, if you're going to tell a horror story, you need the victims. And so the humans got to be our victims, and humans played a really important role. And in fact, I think a lot of people really bonded with the humans because we're the humans. I mean, when you watch the horror movie, you don't really relate to the vampire, or maybe you do, but you relate to sort of the people that the vampires are preying upon. And so the humans really took off. People really enjoyed the human deck. We're like, okay, we're back. And humans are neat in that, some tribes exist in standard at different times. Things go in and out of being there. But the one tribe that kind of is the constant, like almost any world we've gone to, with like one exception so far I can think of, humans are there.
On Innistrad, humans have always been the cattle. You kind of find out as you go through the story that that's kind of how Soren has set it up.
Everything kind of happens to them. And so it's always fun to kind of put humans through the ringer to a degree.
Humans on Innistrad are at a disadvantage. They don't have giant claws, they don't have giant teeth, they're not undead, they don't drink the blood of the young, et cetera, et cetera. So they look for an edge where they can get it. They have equipment. This is a theme that existed in the original Innistrad. We brought it back. We're exploring it a little bit here. Maybe not as much, but definitely there's still equipment that help the humans. Humans can just wield a shovel better than a zombie can. We also have some humans doing some kind of arcane experiments with harnessing the power of spirits. You're going to see some, Geistbuster technology in here that's pretty interesting.
Humans are just not as powerful as monsters. They need a little help. They're going to need to be augmented with auras or equipment in order to help them compete against these beasts with fangs and claws and the reanimated dead and the flying spirits. They just, they can't do it with their bare hands. But you have the tools to give them the tools to win the fight.
The thing about Innistrad, which is really a thing about Gothic horror, is that the monsters are us. This is a setting where all of the evils that press in against humanity are born out of humanity. Vampires used to be human before Edgar Markov performed his ritual that formed the vampire race, and they represent part of what it means to be human. They represent that kind of self-indulgent desire with no use for the trappings of civility and morality that bind humans. Werewolves obviously still are part human, and they are that warring between our civilized nature and our bestial nature. Zombies and spirits also pretty literally used to be human and are two sides of the same coin of the specter of our mortality rising up to confront us. So humans can come across as seeming like victims here, but we see the full range of despair to the courage that it takes to stand up, not just to the monsters of the night, but to the angels that you used to revere.
So the humans of Innistrad have to find some way to defend against now not only werewolves and vampires and zombies and spirits, but also now angels. If you look at the art if you compare like Avacyn Restored art and the art for Shadows of Innistrad, one thing that they kind of share when you look at angels is this kind of looking up toward them. And in Avacyn Restored, there's this sense of reverence when you're looking up. You're looking at Shadows of Innistrad, you're looking up at these angels, and it is kind of this look of fear that they are this oppressive force.